Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Villanova Basketball Report. Bob Long, Tom Trainer, Kevin Long alongside. No K-Mac tonight, but he will join us next week, and he did not shirk his responsibilities. He did provide trivia, and we're going to get to that later in the show, but let's bring in the three gentlemen that are with us here today. Welcome, guys. Great to have you. Time for the opening tip. And we're going to talk through the last week that was with Villanova. Took on the St. Joe's Hawks on Saturday evening, a 9 o'clock tip. That was in place of what would have been UVA at Madison Square Garden. Would have been fun, maybe for another day, another year, another time. But Villanova took care of St. Joe's by 20. Butler, a strong finish in order to put away that Bulldogs team. A strong start to Big East play, 2-0. And Villanova's rolling. Start with you, Tom. Here's an opportunity for Villanova to learn a lot about themselves, and a good week of basketball is the way I look at it.
Yeah, hey, no UVA, but still a very solid week for Villanova men's basketball. Butler, a solid team. Aaron Thompson looked like he was ready to put that team on his back in the last few minutes. They went on some runs. They were a pesky team. Enzi played really well in the post. They looked like they weren't going to go away until, Villanova finally did put them away in the last 5 minutes or so. Similar story with St. Joe's. You had Funk hitting shots from deep. You had Daly starting to turn it on later in the game. But once again, Villanova, held their ground, stayed firm. Some solid defensive efforts. JRE put on 2 great performances, and we saw, Justin Moore, we saw Caleb Daniels step up. And just a really solid week. These were games that they should have won, and should have won comfortably. And it wasn't always comfortable. Butler's a good basketball team, a good program. St. Joe's is a big rivalry game, so that game's always going to be a tough contest, even if it's just for a half or so. But it was really, really good to see Villanova put together a strong finish in both contests, to put the game away and not really have the game in doubt for the last 5 minutes was a relief to see, and I think shows some good progress. So a solid week for Villanova basketball.
Yeah, and Kevin Long, what stuck out to you?
Yeah, I agree with Tom. It's a really solid week for Villanova basketball. I'm really encouraged with the way that they played. Obviously, 20-point victories, a very good sign for this team early on in the season. But I think this team is really starting to find its identity. It's starting to figure out that they're going to play their game through Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He's going to have 15, 20 points a game. And then generally there's going to be someone else around him that steps up. In the Butler game, it was Colin Gillespie putting up 18 points. And then in the St. Joe's game, it was a little bit of Caleb Daniels and Justin Moore having a big game. So I'm really encouraged with the way that this team is playing right now. I'm encouraged with the way that their depth is coming along. Jermaine Samuels had a better game against St. Joe's than we've seen from him, getting some guys like Cole Swider and Eric Dixon involved as well. I think we're going to continue to see those guys get more and more involved in these games later on as the season goes on. But I'm really encouraged with the way that they are coming along, the way that they're developing as a team together. And I really believe that they're just going to keep gelling together more and more as we go on in the coming weeks.
Sure. And speaking of gelling, what sticks out to me is I don't feel as if we've seen this team play a full 40 minutes of Villanova basketball quite yet. Great. Not going to argue with a 20-point win against St. Joe's, although that team is going to struggle mightily this year. I think Billy's doing a nice job over there, scheduling tough. They're going to go play Tennessee this week. Good for him and them. But they're going to struggle personnel-wise this year. And that's a win that could have been by more than 20. Not that it's an issue, but I do feel at times as if, a finish here or there that should have gone, a defensive play once in a while where things are missed. And basketball's far from a perfect sport, but I do feel as if this is a good thing that I'm saying. They haven't nearly hit their ceiling. You see the fundamentals, the skeleton of what 40 minutes of Villanova basketball is like. They just haven't quite played that game yet. And again, that's okay. That may even be a good thing. But they've had nearly 10 games here in 2020 to figure things out, heading into what will be, without a doubt, a unique 2021. And I think that can only help them and puts them ahead of the game compared to these other top teams in the country right now.
Absolutely. And, you're right, Bob. We haven't seen a game where they've clicked offensively for a full 40 minutes or defensively. But, we haven't seen a game, we haven't seen that quintessential Villanova game where they just can't seem to miss from deep. Interestingly, this team doesn't seem to take as many shots from deep as we're used to seeing from Jay Wright's teams. And I think some of that has to do with JRE playing, a bit of the mid-range game and time again down in the post. I think we're seeing players like Caleb Daniels get to the basket. Justin Moore can get to the basket. So it's good to see the offense maybe open up or, attack a little bit differently. But defense is growing. I think that's the biggest thing from getting to play so many games at this point in the season relative to other teams. I mean, the defense just seems to be growing by leaps and bounds each week. Cole Swider seems to be getting better each week, at least, showing more fire, holding his own when he gets stuck out there on an island because teams are going to attack him when they can. I think that Eric Dixon looks good defensively, coming off of that redshirt year. He looks comfortable out there on the defensive end. And I think Brandon Slater, I mean, he's long, he's athletic, he can guard the perimeter. And that entire starting five. I mean, Jermaine Samuels, you mentioned Jermaine, and we talk about him at length on this show, and I think he's starting to find his niche. I think everybody on this team is starting to find their role, as Kev alluded to earlier. And for Jermaine, that's playing good defense, that's playing smart, not forcing things offensively, and it's rebounding the heck out of the ball like he can. And I think that's great to see. I mean, that's what you need from a senior, right? You need a senior to do the things that need to get done to win. And that's what we're seeing from Jermaine right now. But you're right. They haven't put together a full game. You mentioned St. Joe's going to Knoxville. St. Joe's got blown out by almost 40 points tonight to Tennessee. And I think that's the difference, right? Have Villanova puts together a complete basketball game, they blow out St. Joe's by 40 points rather than, the game kind of bleeding away later in the game, and a 8-point game becomes a 20-point game.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Tom. I think that it was certainly a good game they played against St. Joe's, but if you look down the stat line, Colin Gillespie, 3 of 8 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3-point. That's not going to happen very often. You're not going to see Colin Gillespie finishing with 7 points in a game, and even Cole Swider going 1 for 4 from 3, finishing with 3 points. I mean, you have 4, maybe even 5 elite college basketball scorers, I'll say, if you throw Cole Swider in there instead of Jermaine Samuels, and you wouldn't expect them to shoot at that rate. Now, they still shot at 36% from 3 as a team. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl shot the ball well, as did Caleb Daniels, but you would expect to get even more from some of those guys. Even Justin Moore, 1 for 4 from 3. So I still think the sky is the limit for this team, and they can do a lot of bigger things. And I'm looking forward to seeing a game against maybe a UVA or, maybe another top tier team. Obviously, we have Creighton coming up at some point. Really interested to see what we can do against some of those teams.
One of the guys you mentioned was Justin Moore, and I think he is on his way, if he stays long enough, to being one of the best Villanova guards possibly to play. And his ability to slow the game down, play his pace, kind of Jalen Brunson-esque, kind of Randy Foye-esque. We've made those comparisons before. He also hits some really difficult shots. I mean, sometimes you feel like he shouldn't be taking such highly contested shots, but he makes more than his fair share of them. And really his ability to work and to run the offense with his back to the basket, which we're going to talk about this next week in our V's and O's segment when we get the whiteboard involved. But it's so funny because you have 2 quarterbacks of the offense, Justin Moore, and the second guy I'm going to surprise you with, but Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. And the big Jeremiah Robinson-Earl runs the offense with his center, with his front of his body to the basket, and Justin Moore runs the offense inside the perimeter with his back to the basket. And so we're going to walk through that a little bit on the whiteboard session, but suffice to say, you have kind of inside out and counterintuitive roles for these 2 players, 2 guys that are going to lead this team this year. and two sophomores that are absolute studs.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to what we used to see from Jalen Brunson. I know you always make the Randy Foye comparison when you're talking about Justin Moore, but for Justin Moore, even a bigger guy than Jalen Brunson, to be able to use that body, he's a tough guard for a lot of guards out there in the college basketball world. He's a big guy. He can really back you down. He's got the size to take you over the top. So really interesting to see him using that body the way that he can against some of the other guards. And Jeremiah Robinson Earl, I mean, boy, he's just, I've said it before, one of the best offensive forwards we've seen at Villanova in a long time. Really strong with the ball. He's a good ball handler. He can shoot the mid-range, and as you said, the three-pointer. He's got a lot of aspects to his game that I think NBA scouts are going to be taking a look at real soon if they're not already.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that's so interesting that both of those guys can run the offense in different ways. Leads Villanova to Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Wednesday night against Marquette. Kind of a world beater here, Creighton, and then nearly beat Xavier just last night. Really a strong basketball team in Marquette, and always a difficult place to go play. It seems like the Woj era has been defined by Marcus Howard, no longer there, but still quite the crop of shooters and players out there at Marquette. Milwaukee, Wisconsin's not a fun place to go, Tom.
No, and it takes a certain player to want to go to play at Marquette and play up in Milwaukee, right? I mean, think about the players that have come out of that program, right? Dwayne Wade's, Jimmy Butler's, right? Tough blue collar, hard-nosed players come out of that program.
Jay Crowder in the NBA as well.
That's right. And Woj, I think, exudes that, right? Like, I mean, he's just tough as nails. He comes from the Coach K, kind of that military, very disciplined type of a program approach. I mean, he's more fiery out there on the court for sure than Coach K is. But you can see that in his players. They play hard, and they're not afraid of anybody. And you mentioned they've beaten Creighton. They've played a few other pretty close games. They beat Wisconsin. Yep, they beat Wisconsin. And then just a heartbreaker against Xavier last night, kind of a freak buzzer beater at the end by Adam Kunkel. But I mean, Kobe McEwen is a great player. I mean, averaging 15.2 points per game. They have a great freshman, and Dawson Garcia is averaging over 13 points per game. Who's long? He's 6'11", can shoot the three. They have a good basketball team up in Milwaukee, and they are not afraid of anybody. So once again, Villanova is going to get a great test. Look, didn't play Baylor, didn't play Virginia, but still going to be a well-tested basketball team before we begin the next calendar year.
Yeah, I think this speaks to the strength of the Big East and how good it's gotten from top to bottom over the past couple of years. I mean, you think about, losing Sam House or losing Marcus Howard this past year, and you would think Marquette, not going to have a whole lot to stand on this year, maybe doesn't have the firepower. And here they come in their first Big East game of the year, and they beat Creighton. And like you said, close games against Seton Hall and Xavier. These guys are coming out ready to play. That they believe truly that they can beat anybody in the Big East right now. And you're going to get a game from them. They're a well-coached team. They really work well together, and they're very, very disciplined. So this is going to take a good effort for us to go up there and beat Marquette. And I think that this team, like we said, the way that we're playing right now, I feel pretty good about our chances, but there's going to need to be some tough-nosed basketball. We're going to need to see Jeremiah Robinson Earl diving on the floor, and he may take an elbow in the nose every once in a while, but that's what we need from him. That's what we're going to need to win this game.
Well, and beyond Marquette, right, those two other teams that you mentioned, Seton Hall and Xavier. So if Creighton and Villanova are the class of the Big East right now, the Marquettes, the Seton Halls, and the Xaviers of the world. And Xavier is unbeaten, by the way, so they may take offense to this. But man, the middle of the Big East is just rock solid right now. And teams that can go and beat anybody, those three teams are going to and already have beaten each other up. Of course, there's Butler, who I think is going to win a few more games than folks thought this year. I really like Laval Jordan. St. John's, still some work to do. Georgetown, work to do, but you see how well they can play in limited action. Providence, tough team, and then, of course, DePaul. But my goodness, feels like, again, it's a year where folks are just going to beat up on each other, and you can have a 3 or 4 loss conference champion again.
Yeah, and I think it's another year where, the Big East is going to have a bunch of teams between that 6 and 9 seed line that nobody's going to want to play, right? No, any number 1 seed come March is going to see a Big East team in the 8 or 9 column that they could face in the second round. They are not going to want to face that Big East opponent. And they're hard playing teams. They're super talented teams, and they just, as you said, they test each other week in and week out. And I mean, Jay Wright, you can just hear when he talks about the pride he has in being in the Big East Conference. And one team, that we haven't mentioned, welcome back this year, we haven't gotten to see too much of yet, is UConn. They've only played 4 games so far, but
nearly beat Creighton.
That's right. And I mean, this conference is, it's not maybe the alluring one-stop shop for top, ready out of high school NBA talent, although Jeremiah Robinson Earl will tell you different. But it's just a rock solid conference. And I mean, it's a conference that attracts players like Jeremiah Robinson Earl, like Justin Moore, who are just solid basketball players. Like, I don't think the first word that could come to anybody's mind when you see JRE or Moore or Gillespie play is flashy, right? It's just they are solid basketball players. The Big East has had flashy basketball players. I mean, Marquette lost one of them in Marcus Howard, but most of the guys around the league are just solid, well coached, disciplined, and hard fighting basketball teams. That's what this conference is.
Yep, that's true. Although Miles Powell and some of those guys, my goodness, you're right. Some incredible scorers. Shamori Pons, some great guards in recent years. Dante DiVincenzo. But again, the era of that disciplined basketball, like you're talking about, and day in, day out challenge that every other conference talks about. But when push comes to shove, you could argue that the Big East has it in spades, beyond that of most, if not every, other conference. And it's a unique structure. There's no doubt about it. The one thing that caught me, first game of the season, they're playing Boston College, or maybe it was Arizona State, perhaps the second game of the season. But the broadcaster, and those two teams are the ones that are maybe a touch undisciplined, very athletic, love to slash to the hoop, run up and down the floor. And the color commentator said that Villanova basketball beats you and frustrates you the way an old man does when you're playing pickup basketball, a 40-year-old who you can jump higher and dunk and do all these different things, and you're quicker, but he backs you down. He plays disciplined basketball fundamentals, and before you look at it, you're down 12. And that's a pretty nice compliment of this Villanova team, who I would also argue has a lot of tremendous athletes in addition to that old man basketball game.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're really talking about. Against Arizona State or someone of that nature, Boston College, I would argue that the Villanova is the much more athletic team. But he has a point. You see Villanova going up, if they're going up against a team like Kansas or Duke, who constantly have these one and dones, as opposed to the 3 or 4 year guys that Villanova keeps around, like Tom was saying. Jay Wright has a chance to really mold these guys into what he wants them to be. You think about Colin Gillespie is a great example. Not a whole lot of big D1 offers coming into this, but as he's developed over the past couple of years, becoming one of the legendary guys in Villanova basketball, has really become the epitome of what Jay Wright tries to emphasize with his guys, and now is looking at national accolades this year, possibly player of the year, if he has a really good season. But point being is him staying for 4 years and who knows, maybe even a fifth with everything going on right now. He's become one of the top players in the nation as opposed to the one and dones that a Kansas or a Duke normally gets.
I'm glad you brought it up, Kevin, because perhaps my favorite storyline or bit going right now is on these broadcasts when they talk about how few scholarships at the D1 level that Colin Gillespie had. First, it was coming into his senior year, which was accurate, by the way, no D1 offers. And then all of a sudden it's, halfway through his senior year, didn't have any D1 offers. And then in the state championship game, he didn't have any D1 offers. And soon enough, it's going to be he rolled up on campus in an old jalopy and decided he wanted to play basketball. I mean, in truthfulness, he had a few Division I offers before Christmas of his senior year. He got the offer from Villanova in January. And then obviously had a great rest of his senior season. But the timeline, for the purposes of these broadcasts, keeps getting extended. It's quite possibly my favorite bit that announcers don't really know is actually a bit that's out there right now.
But I think I get what you're saying.
No, it's not you. It's not you. It's not what you said.
No,
Your
I
point
know.
is.
But I get their point though too. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the top level guys are committed to a school going into their senior year. So, obviously he was not that guy, and sure, maybe they extrapolate a little bit for their benefit. And, all of a sudden now he's a walk-on that never played basketball in his life. And Jay Wright just saw something and I'm walking around campus one day. But no, I hear what you're saying. But at the same time, it really is unheard of for a guy like that to have a great deal of success.
So Villanova plays Marquette on Wednesday night. Check it out, Fox Sports 1. That's the opening tip here on the Villanova Basketball Report. We're going to shoot it over to Kevin next here on the show. He's going to take us through this week's Cat in the Wild.
Obviously, the NBA is just getting started. Haven't gotten into any kind of a regular season play yet. So not a whole lot of stats to take from, but we're going to go with a new cat in the wild. We've never chosen him before because he's fresh into the wild, and that's Saddiq Bey. Just starting out his NBA career. Good to see him getting on the floor a little bit in the first two preseason games. Not making a whole lot of a mark, as is most of the NBA at this point. Guys getting a little bit of time, getting their feet wet out there in this unheard of season in 2021. But just good to see him out there. Good to see him playing. A late draft gives him a late start with his team, and just good to see him out there and getting into the flow of things. So Saddiq Bey, hoping to hear his name a little bit more later in the season, doing bigger things. But for now, just getting his first NBA minutes on the floor. Saddiq Bey is our cat in the wild here tonight.
There you go. The nation's top small forward last year. It was all but a certainty that he would be leaving for the NBA draft at the end of last year. Doesn't make it easier for Wildcat fans or for Saddiq himself that he didn't have an opportunity on a hard-charging Villanova team last year that would have been a 2 or a 3 seed to make a run in the NCAA tournament. But we do wish Saddiq the best. And Tom, your thoughts? What type of NBA player do you think Saddiq Bey can be?
I honestly think it remains to be seen. I mean, I feel like we only got to see the beginnings at Villanova, right? I mean, he came in a class with Javon Quinterly, who was the story of his entering class at Villanova. I don't know that anybody knew much about him. I didn't know much about him other than he went to Sidwell Friends, where Josh Hart went. And he ended up being clearly the best player in that freshman class right away. Got solid minutes in 2018-19, and then was the guy in his sophomore year. I mean, his trajectory is just incredible. And I think if you just hear him talk about his dedication to the craft, and that he just knows that nothing is a given. He doesn't take anything for granted. I saw a great interview between he and Jalen Brunson, came out a few months back, and it was interesting to hear them sort of compliment one another in that conversation in their approach to the game and in their dedication to the details and those little things every day. Incredible. You wouldn't believe he's a 20-year-old kid. Part of that, as an educator myself, I think definitely comes from his mom, who is an administrator down in the DC area, secondary school education, which Saddiq speaks often about, coming from that background and learning at an early age to work hard for the things you want, and that you have to earn everything. So I think the sky's the limit for him. Obviously, we all know, that he can score the basketball. We all know he's a great defender with the length he has. And I think with the attitude he has, I wouldn't be surprised, if he is, a important rotation player on a big time. And I don't know if that's going to be the Detroit Pistons anytime soon, but on a competitive NBA roster sometime soon.
Great stuff, Kevin Long. Go ahead. Yeah.
Just going to add in, I could be wrong here, but he could very well have been the lowest rated guy in that class coming in. Obviously, Quinterly was the talk of the town coming into it. I think Slater was even very highly rated, and then might have been Swider and Bey down at the bottom two there. So, really interesting to see the way that he developed and really grew well beyond where any of those guys are right now. And, I think Tom hit on it very well. It's just dedication to your craft. Obviously, he was the guy who wanted it more than anybody else, and I think he's got the body to go with it. He's got a lot of good things going for him. He developed his shot well at Villanova. He became a much better ball handler, but he's got that long body where a lot of teams are looking for a 3-and-D type of guy. And that's exactly what he can provide. And I think that, barring some enormous growth and development, I see that being his role for him moving forward for the Pistons.
One more tidbit on that recruiting class while you're at it is two of those players, Javon Quinterly and Saddiq Bey, since you brought them both up, late decommitments from other programs and for wildly different reasons, but both decommitments nonetheless. And the story there, Saddiq Bey, after 2 years in the NBA, Javon Quinterly transferred to Arkansas. So his third program, he never got to Arizona, but essentially third program, recently demoted to the bench there at Arizona. So again, you hope for the best for Javon Quinterly, but like you guys said, different paths for a few of those guys in that class. Two of them still working their way into the rotation on Villanova's roster, which is great, going to be key parts of this team. And Saddiq Bey, flying high, getting ready to begin his NBA career. Great job there with the Cat and the Wild, Kevin. And without further ado, we're going to flip it to K-Mac. No K-Mac here tonight. So Tom Trainer stepping in on a moment's notice. We've seen him do that in large gatherings before. Just drop of a hat. So let's see what you can do here, Tom.
Yes, filling in for the other Kevin this time. But yes, we do have three questions from Kevin McLeernan. So I guess what we will do is, why don't we go question by question? I'll reveal the three answers at the end, but so I'll ask the first question, and why don't you guys just kind of think out loud as you're putting down some answers. Maybe we'll give you a minute or so, and then we'll go to question 2, think out loud again, same thing with question 3, and we'll reveal answers. How about that? Great. All right, so the first, and these are good questions. Get ready. All right, first question. Who is the highest drafted Villanova player since 1985? Hint, 2 guys tied as drafted 7th overall.
Since 19 what year?
Since 1985. So the answer is 2 players.
Okay.
2 players, both drafted 7th overall. Who were those 2 players? But do you guys have any thoughts? Anything you're thinking about? I guess you don't want to give anything to the other guy, though, huh? So how about Kevin Long? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I am not quite ready, I don't think.
All right, we'll give Bob a chance here. Well, maybe throw out some names and mess with him a little bit.
Need some Jeopardy.
Well,
as a timer.
well, Antonio Pena. What do you think about that, Bob?
I know the second answer isn't right here. I think I'm ready.
You're ready?
I don't know, but sure.
All right, great. All right. Well, Kevin was ready first. So, Kev, what do you got?
So I am going to go with Randy Foye and Kerry Kittles.
Tim Thomas, Kyle Lowry.
Tim Thomas, Kyle Lowry. All right. Well, I also guessed. So I guessed earlier when Kevin sent me these questions. I also guessed Kerry Kittles and Randy Foye. The correct answer, and I found this interesting because I wasn't so sure about Foye. I thought it could be Malik Allen or Tim Thomas. It is actually Kerry Kittles is not one of those players. It is Tim Thomas and Randy Foye. Tim Thomas and Randy Foye is the correct answer.
I didn't think Foye was that high. That's all right. Good stuff.
Well, and I thought Kittles was a lock. I wasn't sure about Foye. So
that's what I remember Foye being very high. I think Lowry was a second rounder, if I'm not
mistaken. That could be. You could see me struggling with the second one. Tim Thomas was immediate. I'm like, I'm going to get this second
Kittles
one
was close. Kittles was drafted 8th.
Yeah.
8th.
Yeah. So
tough one.
Not too far. All right. Second question. You know, I'm pretty confident in you guys for this question, but it's a good question nonetheless. All right. Villanova defeated Georgetown, UNC, and Michigan in their NCAA championship title games. But who did they defeat in each of those semifinals to reach those championship games?
Nice. Okay.
So I guess if you could present your answers in order. So we have Georgetown, UNC, Michigan. You present your answers in order.
Bob
looks like you're ready.
I think I'm ready. If I get the first one wrong, I'm going to be really upset. No, wait.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, I'm between 2 on the 85 right now, but 16, 18 locked in. But
ready
to go. All right, Bob, your turn to go first. So we got Memphis State. Yes, Memphis State at the time. We have Oklahoma and Kansas. Kev, what do you got?
I messed up my order here, so I'm going to have some arrows all over the place. But if you can see that, I had St. John's, Oklahoma, Kansas.
Okay.
Right. So St. John's was the other team in that Final Four. Played Georgetown. Yes, Villanova did play Memphis, then Memphis State played Oklahoma in 2016 and Kansas in 2018.
And what was your guess, Tom?
My guess was exactly that: Memphis, Oklahoma, Kansas.
Got it. Memphis State.
Memphis State, to be exact. Okay, question 3. Speaking of Marquette, who Villanova plays this week, Marcus Howard became Marquette's all-time leading scorer last year. Who was the player he passed to become Marquette's all-time leading scorer? I will tell you right now, I did not get this question correct.
I'm ready.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready. Based on Tom's answer, I do not think this is correct. But
I also.
Now, this is funny because Kevin McLaren and I had a little parlay here going on. We had a little side bet on what your ansers would be.
So
let's see if we were right about Kevin Long. All right, so let's go with the Kev. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, Bob, what do you got?
Go ahead.
Wesley Matthews.
Okay, Kev. Jimmy Butler. Okay, so I was not correct. I thought you would. I guessed Dwayne Wade. I knew it wasn't Dwayne Wade. He wasn't there 4 years. But I blanked, didn't know who else to put. I also didn't think it was Jimmy Butler. The correct answer is Jarrell McNeil.
Yeah. Same class as Wesley Matthews. That team was great.
Yep.
Johnson Odom as well.
Yep.
I was close.
There you go. Jarrell McNeil. Great questions by K-Mac.
Yeah, very good questions.
Always
good work.
comes through.
Always comes through. Yeah, so I guess by our count, did we each get one of the 2 draft picks correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Bob and I were 3 out of 3. Kev 2 out of 3 on the Final Four semifinal teams, and then we were all offers on the last one. Yeah.
Although Tom, you actually did you all say both of you said Jimmy Butler? You were also close there because he was just one class below Wesley Matthews, Darius Johnson Odom, and
I did
Jarrell
not.
McNeil.
I said Dwayne Wade.
Oh, okay.
Knowing very well that was not the correct answer.
Kevin was very close.
You never know. He could have had 2 really good years.
Well, he did, in fact.
Well,
yeah,
he did.
if the entire season had been like that tournament run, maybe he would have been.
Yeah.
Great work by K-Mac. We'll get him back on here next week. And with that said, time now for the Shootaround.
That's right. Time for some shout-outs. So this can be, anything related to Villanova basketball generally, whatever you want, or Auburn football if you're K-Mac, like last week. Shout out whatever you want to shout out. This week I am going to shout out a Villanova men's basketball player, and that is Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He was just so solid this week. He continues to be so solid. 18 points against Butler, 25 against St. Joe's, knocking down 4 out of 8 from 3. And again, I love to see him just so ready to shoot the 3-point shot. Last year, he was a little hesitant, just being careful, make sure it was a good shot. But it's nice to see him not just be a threat out there, but a ready threat out there that teams have to respect. Is great. So Jeremiah Robinson Earl is my shout out for the week. Just such a solid player.
Kevin?
I'm going to go a little bit outside of Villanova here in my shout out tonight. I'm going to go with the Northwestern Athletic Program. I just believe that they are starting to build something special out there. A Big Ten championship appearance in football, a huge win over Michigan State this week in basketball. And you just get the sense that their athletics program is coming around. They were very much a cellar dweller in the Big Ten across the board for a long time. And now you got some programs that are coming together. You're in a great area in Chicago, a great hotbed for recruiting. And I think that we're going to see some special things coming out of them. So just wanted to give them a quick shout out for a good week.
Very good.
Two great coaches, right? And Pat Fitzgerald and Chris Collins, like great coaches leading those men's basketball and football programs.
I like that. We're going to have some fun with this one. Today's shout out is to everybody's favorite referee, collegiate basketball referee. That's Jeff Anderson. You might know him as the high knees guy, the guy who runs up and down the floor with the high knees, patting the knee. You know it. You know the guy I'm talking about. And if you don't, you can check him out on Twitter. There is a Jeff Anderson fan page, a Twitter account that follows his every move, lets you know when he's refereeing games, and giving you clips from games where he's particularly emphatic about the high knees. Everybody's favorite referee, Jeff Anderson. If you don't know him, check him out. He's the best.
That's great. I am going to have to go through that Twitter feed after the show.
Check it out. You'll know him. If you don't know him right now as I speak of him, you will know him when you see that. Jeff Anderson.
I know. Became famous, I believe, like during the 2016 Final Four, or was it 18? I don't know, because I think he reffed one of those championship games.
Of course, he's the best.
That's right. Great. And, the high knees, they need it for the ambiance on CBS.
Yes. He makes up for the lack of high knees and little arm wiggle that Mike Kitsy does. Mike Kitts running up and down the floor. So it's a good barometer there. So that's what we got. Shoot around. Boys, great show. I enjoyed the time very much. And good enough.
Enjoyed being with you.
Yeah, good enough question from K-Mac that we might just let him back next week.
Sounds good. Yeah, great week of Villanova basketball. Great to be on the show again. Just a heads up, because I know my shout out last week for Villanova women's basketball. They are 7-0, but their game for tomorrow night against UConn has been postponed. So I have to wait for the first big clash with Gino Auriemma's program for the Villanova Lady Wildcats.
And hopefully still undefeated by the time that game comes. We shall see. Guys, thanks for bringing it. For my money, the best crop of Villanova guys out there to be doing this with, and appreciate everybody bringing it tonight, as you always do. So for Tom Trainer, Kevin Long, and on behalf of KMAC, I'm Bob Long saying, of course, so long here, and we'll see you next week. Maybe not next week, maybe after the holidays, but we wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holiday Season in general. And we'll see everybody soon for more Wildcat Hoops Talk.